Well, hi, my name is Clark Bosser, and I'd like to say thank you for joining us for today's webinar. The title for the webinar today is Streaming Data Management and Compliance for Manufacturers. And so that's going to be some of what we're talking about today. And I think we have a few other folks that are going to be coming into the webinar and joining, so we'll wait just a moment for them. But in the meantime, we'll just go around and we'll introduce each other. So my name is Clark Bosser. I'm the Director of Business Development here at Canary, and I'm joined by my colleague, Russ Gregg. Russ, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Russ Gregg. I'm Solutions Director of Solutions, Manufacturing Solutions at Canary. I've been around the industry both as a client and customer of these type of technologies. And I'll be here just to add commentary, answer questions about the Canary system as we move forward with webinar. Thank you.
Then I guess I'll go from NeoMatrix side. My name is JT Hart. I'm a sales engineer at NeoMatrix. I've been with Neo for about 2 years now. Before I stepped into the sales role, I was an automation engineer, so I have some background experience in historians as well as ignition. Then I'll let Chris introduce himself.
My name is Chris Van Ray Mortel. I am a solutions architect at NeoMatrix. I've been with Neo about 3.5 years. Before that, I spent close to 30 years in plastics manufacturing, specifically sheet and film extrusion, and have a lot of experience with SCADA and historians and all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Chris. And just to give some broader context for why we're doing this webinar together, if you might be familiar with Canary, or you may have received this invitation from NeoMatrix if you're familiar with them. But Neo has been one of our partners for quite a while, and so they're one of our top integrators, and they do work, and I'll let them share more about their company and the specific spaces that they focus on. But in this webinar, you're going to get an introduction to really what is Canary if you don't have any familiarity with what the Canary system is and who we are as a company. I'm going to share some of that. And then also, JT is probably going to share some of the background of NeoMatrix and really what they focus on. But we've kind of come together because we had a use case that we felt like was going to provide some valuable content, hopefully, to our listeners. And so Chris is going to be taking us through a demonstration. So really where we're going to start is just kind of the background of Canary, who we are as a company and how the system works. And then JT is going to introduce NeoMatrix and what they do as a system integrator. And then we're going to go through this use case that Chris is going to provide a bit of a demonstration on. And some of the tools that you're going to see used is going to be Canary, obviously, but then also Ignition SCADA was a critical part of solving the problem that Chris is going to be outlining. So that's really going to kind of be the format for today's discussion. After Chris's demonstration, then we're going to go to a kind of just like a looser dialogue. And at that point, you're welcome to ask any questions. So we want to invite you as the audience to ask any questions that you have of any of us, really about either NeoMatrix or Canary, and specifically about this use case. Please ask any questions that you want, and you can use the functions here within this Teams webinar. You can use the chat to ask questions, or the Q&A feature. Of course, you can ask them in stride, and we're happy to answer them as we go along, or you can save them to the end and we can address them at length. That's totally fine. So I think that's basically going to be the structure, and feel free to chime in at any moment. Also comment about any features that you find interesting and how they might relate to the projects that you're working on. And we would love to connect with you, of course, in this webinar, as well as outside of this conversation. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. I'll tell you a little bit about Canary, and then JT, I'm going to hand it over to you. You can tell us about NeoMatrix and we'll go from there.
Sounds good.
Cool. So can everyone see this?
Got it.
Yes.
Perfect. Hang on a second. Let me see if I can. Okay, there we go. Just a bit of a lag with PowerPoint. Let me jump back to the beginning. I don't mean to spoil it all. I know that you're eager to learn about Canary, so I don't want to blitz you with too many slides too quickly. Let's see if I can move slowly through this. So, okay, so if you don't know what Canary is, you probably have maybe seen the logo, or you've heard of us. We're not a SCADA system. We're really we're also not an analytics framework, but Canary is a proprietary NoSQL time series historian database that is purpose-built just for industrial automation. So you can think of us as like a time series data management solution that's built for industrial automation. And the way that we help our customers, we really just help them make use of their process data. It's out of the box ready, and it really kind of helps you make strides in your digital transformation journey. So just to give you some background on who we are as a company, is that we've been around since 1985. To date, we have well over 20,000 installations in over 70 countries, and currently the Canary system is used in every major industry. So whether you're in food and beverage, oil and gas, mining, metals and materials, any other industry vertical, we have Canary systems in use in those spaces, and we'd be happy to connect you with references. Some of the companies listed here on the right are US based, but of course we've got references all around the world in both critical and non-critical infrastructure. Now, the primary way that we go to market is going to be through our system integrator and distributor partners, of which NeoMatrix is one. We have well over 130, and this is great because it really allows us to provide support and expertise in your time zone, in your language, and with an integrator that has expertise, like I said, in that vertical or in that space that you're working with. So JT, I'm going to let you share a bit more here in a second, but I think that you have a focus a bit on pharmaceuticals as well as a few other industry verticals. So please share that here in a second. And lastly, Canary is owned and operated by our original founders and their families with no outside investment or controlling interest. And we've grown this way strategically because it gives us the greatest amount of control in our ability to be responsive to the needs of the market, to control the development of the product, and just really try to, we take tremendous pride in the way that we support our product, but we also want to just develop it in response to our customers' needs. So that's a bit about us, and there's a lot to get to, so I'll try to run through this fairly quickly. But just to give you an idea of, how does the Canary system work? How does it actually take raw data and turn it into useful information? I'm going to answer that question here on this slide. And the Canary system really functions in 3 steps. So we start by securely collecting and storing all of your process data from your edge and IoT devices. So we're going to take all of your edge data, any SCADA system, any PLC, any protocol, we're going to bring it into the Canary system using store and forward, which means that your data, if the connection is lost between the edge device and the historian, that data is going to it's going to buffer locally and then backfill automatically into the historian when that connection is reestablished. So once the data comes into the historian, really here in step 2, that's a great first step to have the data, but it's not actually actionable information by which you can make better decisions until you assign context to it. And that's kind of the story or the focus here in step 2. So we want you to be able to clearly see the story that your assets are telling with asset modeling, with our calculation server, and with our events. So those are just 3 ways that we assign context. I won't dive too deeply into any of these 3 steps during this webinar, just because we cover some of that in our weekly webinar as well as our YouTube resources. But if you'd like to learn more, of course, you can personally reach out to me. I'd be happy to explain that to you, or just take advantage of our Help Center and YouTube resources. But moving on from step 2, which is all about assigning context and just transforming that raw data into useful information. In step 3, we help you maximize your operation. And what I mean by that, and the primary way that we do this, is going to be through our Axiom visualization tool. So shown here on the right-hand side is going to be Axiom, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. This is just a very simple example that's got some charts, some spark lines, some donut gauges, and some trending. It's a really powerful tool that's also very user-friendly and easy to use and very quick to adopt, but enables you to build, applications, dashboards, trends, right on your phone or on any device in the field, do ad hoc trending, super easy to use. And also Canary licensing comes with an unlimited number of Axiom clients, as well as our Excel add-in client, with no extra charge. So we really only charge just for the number of tags within your historian server, and then we make that data available to anyone in your organization that would like to use it. And we just believe you're going to make better decisions, you're going to run a more efficient operation when everyone can use the data. So that's what we're all about here. Another great thing is that we don't license any of our collectors to bring the data in, so you can have one single historian. You can have 100 different sites with 100 different protocols, all collecting data in different ways, and we don't charge for any of that. You're welcome to use all of our collectors for free. And then we also make the data completely free to get it out of, it's completely free to get your data out of the historian into your favorite third-party applications and platforms or tools with no additional licensing needed. So in that sense, we completely eliminate platform lock, and this enables us to function well within any ecosystem that you have or any tech stack. And so that's even some of what Chris, I think, is probably going to highlight, because the Canary system in this application, or this use case that we're going to discuss, has been used with Ignition SCADA. So You don't have to use Ignition, but for our intents and purposes here, we'll be referencing Ignition. But the point being that you can use you can use Canary really within any SCADA or with any other package that you have without any issue. Now, this is just something that I'll mention as well. We have the Canary module for Ignition. All this is, and Chris might touch on this very briefly, but Chris is going to be using Ignition SCADA with the Canary Historian, feeding data to it. And some of how that's done is that the Canary Historian enables you to log data natively. It can also be an Ignition tag history provider, and it provides that performance that scales because we're a proprietary NoSQL time series historian database. That's just going to really give you a lot of extra horsepower when it comes to scalability. And then if you want to try it, it's of course free to try from Canary's website or Ignition's module showcase. So I know that I moved through this kind of quickly, and there's a lot more to learn, so I don't want to overwhelm you or blitz you with too much information too quickly. So I'll go ahead and probably leave it there. And JT, I would love for you to explain kind of who you are at NeoMatrix, really what you do, what you specialize in, some of the history of the company, and really anything else that you'd like to share that would give us context for this conversation, bringing NeoMatrix, Ignition, and Canary together.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks again for inviting us and doing this with us. So I'll go quickly too, as Clark did, talk about Ignition, kind of just go over how we started, where we are now. So NeoMatrix is a systems integrator. We're based out of the Boston area. We've been in business for a little over 21 years now. Our core value proposition is help people manufacture a better future. So obviously, we're a business, we want to make money, but we also take a lot of pride in who our customers are and what we end up making as an end product. So we do a lot of electric vehicle manufacturing and life sciences. A little bit more of what we do. So obviously we kind of start at the plant floor and I'd say PLC level and up. So we're not a panel shop. We don't build any machines or skids. We start at the PLC layer and work our way up. So obviously that involves industrial automation and process control, PLC programming, putting together SCADA systems, and then kind of step up from that is enterprise integration. So our MES solutions, that's a big one with working with a partner like Ignition as well as Canary. We need our history to be able to develop those and show OEE. The next one, which Chris will touch on more, is digital transformation and manufacturing. So a big buzzword now is Industry 4.0, getting all your devices interconnected, able to talk to each other through MQTT or another platform. Another area we do work in, not as much, is regulatory compliance. So having a lot of customers in pharmaceuticals or life sciences, we need to make sure that we're compliant, whether that's validation or writing validation protocols, commissioning, and then finally sustaining services. Once we hand over a product to you or we partner with you, we don't want to just leave you high and dry. We don't have a software subscription service kind of thing, but if you ever need help, we're always going to be there to assist you. Some of the platforms we work with, obviously like this webinar, we work with Canary. One of our biggest is inductive automation for SCADA and MES, and then Rockwell for PLC programming. That's what I'd say most of our work comes from. We love our partners as well as mainly ones like Ignition and Canary. We're vendor agnostic, so we don't always try to sell to make more money on whatever software you end up using. We try to partner with what's going to set you up for the best long-term success, which is great with a software like Canary. That's sometimes it's more cost effective and makes a great product as well over its competitors. One point I want to highlight on is we are an Ignition Premier Integrator. We've been using Ignition since 2009 when it was Factory SQL, or I forget the name of it exactly, but we've kind of grown with them as they have been gaining a popularity. It's been great for us because we work alongside them. A lot of Ignition projects. It's just a really powerful tool, and all of our engineers are trained up on it, which helps a lot. And then just some of our sample customers, as Clark said, we do have a big vertical in life sciences. So Pfizer, Lilly, and Moderna, as well as Millipore. Another one of our big industries is semiconductors. So companies such as Integris, and then electric vehicle manufacturing like Lucid, as well as recently hydrogen vehicles have been gaining in popularity, which has been interesting to work alongside with. And then some of the more higher regulatory companies like Raytheon. That's all I have for going over Neo.
Awesome. Well, thanks, JT. Thank you for that introduction. Chris, I want to say you actually have quite a bit more, I'd say, ignition prowess than what we'll get into in this conversation. So I'll leave that for another time. But Chris, I'd like to hand it over to you. Would you mind just sharing kind of, I guess, the story of what's been done with this use case that you're going to share, kind of just some of the background, and I'll just go ahead and hand it over to you for your commentary.
Sure, great. I'm going to turn my camera off because I'm not going to look at the screen. So, a real quick intro as to what we did with this project. Sorry. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, great. So this all originated from when we did a UNS solution for a dairy processor. And the idea was to use, Industry 4.0's technologies like MQTT to sort of democratize the data and allow us to get data from everything, any kind of place. Once we learned how powerful this was, we decided to create an internal UNS training module to teach everyone in the company, how to do this. And the capstone project is was to build something using all this architecture to show that, what they learned. Thus, we came up with NeoMatrix Tech Hops. Of course, we all like beer, so this UNS demonstration was all about brewing. Here's a quick diagram of the architecture of how we're doing this. We're using a tool called HiByte, which is a data ops tool that allows you to move data between systems. Specifically, what we're doing here is we're using HiByte to grab weather data from an API, process data, simulated process data through OPC, as well as OE data calculated ignition using the Suprasoft module back and publishing that to a broker. Then the broker is publishing data to Canary subscribing to data from the broker, historizing that, and Ignition is looking at both the broker for real-time data as well as Canary for historical data for dashboards and that kind of stuff. I will then go to the actual screens. So first, this is the configure. I'll do a 2-minute spiel about HiByte. HiByte, like I said, is a data ops tool. It allows you to move data around from different systems into different systems, and it's very powerful and can do a lot of stuff in a very little bit of code. So what we're doing is we're using Ignition to simulate our data, and we have this weather API, and then we're dumping it into a broker. So real quick, you create pipelines which define what you're going to do with the data. In this case, it's reading the data, breaking it up, and publishing it to the broker. And then you have a flow which you have a source, and then the target is the pipeline, and that's pretty much it. And now you're publishing data to the broker. So here we're running MQTT Explorer. So all this information, these counts, all these updates are coming from our simulated data into the broker through HiByte. And literally took 10 minutes to set up once you've understood how actually to build flows and pipelines. But you can move a lot of data with a very little bit of code. So it truly is a low code environment. So then what we're doing is once it's in the broker, we are using Canary to historize that data. And I'll bring up the Canary one. There we go. So this is the home page for the Historian. As you can see, we are Historian. We're logging all of these tags to the various databases within Canary. And again, the setup was very straightforward. In this case, we said we just wanted to log everything that was in the broker. So it took configuration of maybe 10 minutes to say everything that's in the broker, log to a database. And then we're getting all this information. As you can see, this is specifically conveyor. Could go through different ways. This obviously wouldn't be how you would use the data long term, but this is a way to look at the data through the Canary browser to see that it is indeed logging data.
And Chris, if you don't
Yes.
mind, I'll just interject right here as well. Something that you said I think is powerful, that this took 10 minutes or whatever it was to spin it up or begin to log data. What the screen that you're looking at right here, this is what we call Canary's administrator, and so there's several tiles there on the home screen. But something that I think is a bit of a departure in people's expectations when they think of an industrial historian product is that I think the expectation is I need to have a team or a half a department administering this tool, and that's really not the case with Canary. This is something that doesn't require central database administration. It doesn't require the devotion of resources really to just handle this tool. It's something that I do on my own computer. You've done here by yourself, and you're logging data, you're collecting it, and then you're manipulating it, adding structure to it, adding context, and then publishing it to Ignition. So I just felt like that was worth mentioning. Is that Canary is something that is, like we said, it is out of the box ready. It's very easy to stand up and get going with, and so that's our goal. Start to finish, is that we want to make it easy for people to use their process data and get value out of it, rather than that being something that's a headache or a giant mountaintop or an obstacle in the way. We try to make that easy. So even start to finish, from the administrator through to Axiom, that's really our goal. So Chris, please continue. But thanks for mentioning that, and I'm glad that it was a good experience. That's what we hope for out of the box for particularly new users. But sorry, Chris, thanks for letting me interject, and please continue.
Absolutely, interject all you like. So we'll go back down to the other virtual machine. So we've got Canary, we've got HighByte set up to take data from the various sources and dump them into the broker. We've configured Canary to historize the broker. Then what we do is we set up Ignition to use that Canary as a historian, and they have a module that you can add in. And there's collectors and providers. Collectors is pushing data to Canary. Providers is getting data from Canary. In this case, we're only using the provider. And it is as simple as specifying a very clever name, MQTT broker, the host name, and the port. And now we've got historized data, which leads us back to our tech ops. This is the app that the winning team's capstone project was. It was also the team that worked on the original project, so they had a bit of a advantage anyway. So between the experience in auto manufacturing, dairy, other stuff, we built a number of end-on screens for this. And some of this is real data coming directly from the broker. Some of this is Sepasoft OE data coming from the Sepasoft module in Ignition, and then the history stuff's coming from Canary. So you can see right here we've got a couple of spark lines on temperature and capper speed. We can go to, this is another one for the kegging operation. And also, now that we've got all the history from Canary, we can, besides build screens with that data, we can also just have an ad hoc screen that allows us to, graph the count as it's going in, and we can change this to hours if we wanted to. So as you can see, it's very easy to use the data that's in Canary. And that is pretty much the demo that I got. If anyone has any questions, I'd be sure to happy with. But the point is, it's very straightforward to connect Canary to the broker and connect Ignition to Canary to give you what I think is a better way to historize data rather than dumping in the SQL, and then use it as if it were any other tag and tag in Ignition. So
awesome. Chris, and this is something that I'd probably like to get your expertise on, Russ, as well as yours. You just mentioned there's different purposes, of course, for different levels of tools, and there's the Ignition Historian, there's the Canary Historian, there's the rest of the Ignition SCADA suite, so to speak. Different value coming from different bits of these systems. But I'm interested in, your recommendations or what you see as kind of the appropriate use, because of course, Canary, we can use it for we've got, couple hundred tag food and beverage installations, as well as multi-million tag battery electric storage systems. So it's really, kind of all over the place in terms of scale. So we cover a really broad range of the market. So I'd be interested to get kind of your opinions on where Canary shines, who it might be applicable for, and I guess, I have a sense on that too. But what you just showed us in this demonstration, it actually wasn't showing the Canary Axiom visualization tool, and I say that because you can get a lot of value out of different parts of both Ignition and Canary, and some people get tremendous value just in the Historian, and that's really what was shown here, is that you were just using the Historian part. You configured it there on the back end with the administrator, and then you're sending that tag data to Ignition to be visualized there. But Chris and Russ, what do you think as far as the benefits of the Canary Historian coupled with Ignition? What that provides for this application, as well as to if you want to provide a fictitious example, of where the combination of these tools, might be something that's really advantageous to a customer.
I'll jump in real quick, make 2 comments, and let Russ expand. But I think in the Ignition system, in the systems I've built, SCADA systems I've built, everything works great. But then when you get into scalability, that's when you run into problems. One of the, SQL can be pretty heavy, and the fact that your storage engine is faster and much more compact than a SQL engine, when you're doing 500, 1,000, 2,000 tags, doesn't really matter. But when you're doing 100,000 tags, I think that's where you're really going to see an advantage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, and I'll write on top of that. Our Canary Historian can scale, up to 2 million tags and sustain our industry-leading read-write rates. So I think you'll find that our performance is really outstanding. And that comes into play. Not every tag needs to be updated at millisecond intervals. But if you're collecting vibration data or high frequency data and speed matters, then a tool like Canary is, advantageous for collecting and storing that data so that you can get the resolution you want. I would say the other thing that we really pride ourselves in is our open architecture. We're very open and flexible, and we build on standards wherever and whenever possible. We also participate in the standards teams and boards for like MQTT, Sparkplug, OPC, and others to have an influence on the direction that those tools take. So all of that combined really gives us insight on where the direction's going and allows us to build that into the tools. I think Chris showed here too, the thing that we're seeing more and more of is the implementation of unified namespace. If that's new to you, there's a lot of opportunity to learn about that. We've got some videos on our side, and NeoMatrix has experience with it, and there's other resources out there on the web. And that is becoming really, I think, falling out of the Industry 4.0 direction because of its flexibility, because the data can be configured and defined at the edge. And one of the things that Canary does really well is that since we have a rules-based engine, we start at that tag level. You can create rules, writing regex expressions, and it automatically maps and will assign the data in those tags to assets that you define within our view service. So we did have a question here from Richard asking about how we have a framework like asset framework and analytics in Pi. And the answer is yes. We do it quite differently though. We derive and start at the data. And the reason we do this is that our views are all virtual. So you can create frameworks or modules, templates, views, and you can build as many of those as you want. and you can reuse data in tags in multiple models. So you're not constrained like you can be in the Pi AF infrastructure. I was a Pi user for 20 years, so I know the Pi system very, very well. Their approach, like I said, is just, it's different. We believe that ours is really more based modern. And what that allows us to do within the views is new tags are added. We see them, we automatically assign them to the proper asset, and then we take that data and from within our Axiom dashboarding tool, we automatically update our views there. So if you add an asset, it flows from the tags to the asset, from the asset to the asset view, and from the view, it's created and it will automatically show up in your dashboard with no maintenance. And that's all built on writing on where directionally things are going with more data and data structures to be found at the edge. So I know that was long-winded, but hopefully that went through the topic. So.
Yeah, Russ, you betrayed yourself a bit in the sense that you've got so much Pi knowledge that I will probably shout you out as a bit of a resource. So if you are familiar with the Pi system and you want to dive a little bit deeper just on the mapping between Pi system functionality and Canary, then feel free, I guess, to reach out to all of us, but specifically Russ and then the guys at NeoMatrix, because we all NeoMatrix, you all work with the Pi system, but Russ, you've been an extensive user for many years, so. Please feel free to post more of those questions in the chat. We'd love to address those as well as reach out to us online. Let me check the chat here and see if we have some other questions. But Chris, you touched on the UNS earlier, and Russ, you kind of dove in from that starting point. That's a concept that it could be fairly understood or misunderstood depending on where people are coming from. There's a lot of work that takes place in a lot of manufacturing facilities that are not using the UNS architecture. For those that are a little bit less familiar, would you mind just giving just a high-level brief overview of that and how that affected your project?
Sure, and I'm sure I will mess it up as well. The big thing that UNS is a big buzzword that's used by a lot of people. I think there's two important things about UNS. One of them is one place for one source of truth. And that's using the MQTT broker. So everything is in the broker. Everybody can go to the broker and subscribe to just the information they need to subscribe to and be able to get that data out of there. One thing I did not, I sort of blew through the architecture diagram, but let me show it again. Imagine you can the idea of this spoken hub idea of data management, where the broker is the hub, and then right here we're only feeding data to Ignition and Canary. But you could have an ERP system, some other type of data visualization tool, an MES system, whatever, subscribing to the broker data and publishing to the broker data to make it available to everybody else. So I think that is a key thing, because again, we're talking about scalability, is that in some of the projects I've worked on, once we start building out a structure, the production model of the plant, you start getting lots and lots of cells and cell groups, and it can get a little funky as to how you access stuff and how you keep everything together. But using this broker technology, it's very efficient in storing data.
Yeah, absolutely. Efficient and scalable. And I think the complexity goes down too, because OPC is client server. So you've got to set up those connections, and it's much more involved. And by having that central broker, Canary is just another client. We sign up for the data. I think one of the things that we do well in Canary is that we both can accept MQTT, right? So we have an MQTT collector that we provide, with the system at no additional charge. But then we also publish out as MQTT. So I think when Chris was showing his diagram, you can see that not only are we reading the data in, but we're writing it out. And I think he showed us writing back to Ignition, but we could just as easily turn around and write data that we did in a calculation or an analytic within our system and write it right back to the broker as a tag as well. And then it would become available to all users. So that flexibility with the UNS is really, I think, a key to really driving the future of open systems and open connectivity in providing that data to everyone. And because it's published and subscribed, you don't have to get overwhelmed. You go in, you dig in, you find out what you want through a layered structure that has asset structures defined within itself that you can define within the layers of MQTT levels. And it becomes very powerful.
Yeah, the other thing it does
Awesome.
is it allows you, so we're not using Sparkplug B. We're just using plain JSON. But the way we're working allows us to build this hierarchy of, starting at the enterprise level, tech ops, then the site is Portsmouth. And then we have packaging, an area packaging, and we'll call it an area 2 weather. And we're getting data. So this allows you to organize the data in a hierarchical method, similar to like an IC95 production model method, to be able to then have everyone look at the data the same way and be able to drill down from the enterprise all the way down to the count for the filler.
Which, Chris, I think what you're kind of talking about right now might answer Anthony Smith's question. He was asking, what are your recommendations on data set management when you are consuming from dozens or hundreds of production sites? So I'd like to know, or
yeah, so
I think that data is easy to navigate. Go
right.
ahead.
And we're so, the technology, this isn't a broker webinar, but there's a lot of technology in being able to make brokers scalable as well. So you could have brokers that are site, just worry about a site, then push up to an enterprise broker. Talking before about one of the things I really like about MQTT, again, because talking about scalability and issues I've run into, is that, OPC is a polling, and if you got it set to ask the PLC every second, what's the set point, what's the set point, that's a lot of wasted CPU cycles in the PLC. And we've run into problems at sites where we're overloading the PLC, not because of the logic it's doing, but the comms it's doing. So Nirvana, in my mind, is when you've got a PLC that can publish changes to a broker and only publish changes. So then the broker has the most current data. The PLC is only doing stuff when it needs to and is not being overloaded by 5 different clients asking the PLC the same question.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point.
Yeah. And something that I'll just add kind of, to a central theme coming from 2 different perspectives that you both just shared is kind of just the way that, Canary, NeUNS, and Ignition, and the right set of open interoperable tools can really kind of future-proof your operation. So from a licensing standpoint, when you can get your data in and out of a system for free, that really eliminates platform lock. It enables you to grow without, the same considerations for technical debt. And then also when you're using a UNS structure that's enabled by these tools that are open and accommodating to that architecture, really enables you to grow without scalability limitations, and you're not severing a digital thread. You've just got a better architecture. So thank you both for explaining some of that. As I go through some of these questions, also feel free to expand on that comment if you'd like, but I want to make sure that we respond to these ones that are in the Q&A in the chat. Russ, there was one from Anthony that JT just mentioned. And it was, what are your recommendations on data set management when you're consuming from dozens or hundreds of production sites? We'd like to ensure that the data is easy to navigate in small data sets, but reduce the amount of overhead it takes to create / maintain a data set for each site. So I'll say from a licensing standpoint, it's great because we don't charge for a ton of data sets coming in from different places. But once it's within Canary, we can speak to that part. Of course, we could, Chris, you're welcome to share about Ignition if you'd like. But Russ, is there anything, or Chris, that you'd like to expand on with that note?
So I think that the answer is it depends. But one common approach is that you deal with a like set of assets. For example, so let's say in this example, I think we had brewing, we had packaging machines, So let's say you had a case packer or a set of case packers by a specific, supplied by a specific vendor, maybe they're the same model number or something like that. You could create a view specifically for that asset type. The advantage of that is you collect all of the data, so there's one place to go for case packers or that particular vendor. And then when you build your data structures, obviously your asset structure in our Canary views, much like AF, but within our views would be the same. And you could just read that in. If you're working from a UNS and the edge structure, it's really automatic. It's already structured there. So we just read that structure and bring it right into our system and follow the structure that's already been defined. So that's one way to do data sets. If you're smaller sites, obviously you could do a data set by different sites if you were coming into an enterprise level on Canary Historian. But it really just kind of depends on your asset structure and your organization and the commonalities that are shared. So I would look for those commonalities first and think through your overall data structure. As you're starting to define how you want to build and create those structures. And Chris, I don't know if you want to add to that, but it's really similar when you're thinking about even how you want to structure your UNS. So
yeah, I'll actually go to the cost part of it. I've been using Ignition for about 10 years, coming from a much more expensive option. We had this option. We had three workstations running this, and to upgrade to the latest version would cost us upwards of $30,000. And we bought an Ignition license for 12, and that included redundancy and all the unlimited. Democratizing data is this big buzzword, but it allowed us to take HMIs for specific machines and allow everyone to see read-only versions of that, so everyone understood what was going on the floor. They didn't have to go bother the operator. They can go just look. They could graph data, that kind of stuff. Canary's the same way, where it's not going to say, "Oh, sorry, you only have 5 users." You've got your tag. You're getting charged by the tag, but you could have 1 user or 1 million users, and it doesn't matter. Things like high byte, you're paying by the server. It doesn't matter if you're moving 10 pieces of data or 10 million pieces of data. It's the same thing. You're buying the tool. You're not buying how many times you turn the wrench. And I think that is huge.
Right. Definitely when you think about scalability. And I think the other thing is, we're kind of switching from the original question, but when you're looking at your platforms and your platform decisions, you need to look at, hey, what are the actual licensing, models that I can use, right? Can I do subscription? Can I do, can I purchase the software outright? And what's the total cost of ownership? Because if you sometimes just look at the components, but you're not looking at how they're going to work together and their scalability and the cost of that scale, you can kind of think, well, this is, not that expensive. I can get started. And then when the add-ins start adding up, and you're paying for this connector and this interface, and now I got to pay to deliver data out, and now I'm paying for individual clients. The cost can escalate really rapidly. So you really, need to look at that. So with data sets, we're flexible. You can structure them pretty much any way you want. I'm kind of a fan of structuring them around assets, because at the end of the day, we really tend to model things around assets. We want to do asset reliability. We want to look at asset performance. If you go that route, then it becomes very modular, and it scales nicely. So that's a way to keep them small.
Yeah. Russ, this is awesome. And I'm just thinking, for time's sake, I want to make sure that we, provide enough time for the questions and for any other content that we want to cover. There's one question here from Richard that I'd like to touch on, which is, and actually before we go to that one, I'll just add one more final comment here just on that previous remark, which is that, with Canary, we've kind of seen that there's, we'll oftentimes encounter customers that are looking to migrate from another historian system, and they've made architecture decisions based on non-technical information. So they've made it based on a licensing structure. So, they're making these architecture decisions based on how much it's going to cost. And we really tried hard to eliminate that by saying, hey, you can pay for the number of tags that you need. Everything else is free and included at no extra cost. And that really enables you to have the most performant, compliant architecture that really serves your organization best without having these competing, considerations. And we just think that that's something that serves the customer well. And so I'll dive more into the licensing here at the end if you want to explore Canary further, if you want to take any next steps. But Russ, we've just got a question here. Chris, you can add in as well. But within Canary, you can also speak to the ignition part if you'd like. But how would you show how data is structured? Say if you wanted to model a gas turbine /pump/compressor. This gentleman is a Pi user that's been using Pi for about 20 years. So Russ, if you don't mind expanding just that hierarchy, how it works in Canary.
So first I'll say, after this meeting, reach out to me, and I just wrote a technical article that really addresses this well, provides a good overview. But we do that through what we call our view service. So in Canary, everything that's on the client side is views. Even internal within our own applications, we go through what we call our view service. So the historian you never touch the historian directly. Everything goes through views. Views has a wrapper around it. We have a web API. We also have a C#.NET library for your own programs. So it's very easy to query data out through views. When you use our Excel add-in, it's going through views. Everything goes through views. All our security is established from views. So we create this virtual front. What our views administrator does is it allows you to select your set of tags that are coming in. You write regex expressions, regular expressions that you can read the tags, you can alias the tags, and you can structure the tags. We use a dot nomenclature to distinguish between different levels. Those levels could be assets. Those levels could be levels within a process. Any way you want to define what a level is, you just would nomenclate with a dot and show that it's different level. So like in AF, for example, in your example here where you said, hey, I got a gas turbine. So I'd have turbines, and that's an asset type. I would define a pump as a type and a compressor as a type. But then when I'm writing those regular expression rules, all I'm doing there is matching those based on the text and assigning them out to the appropriate asset. And then when new data is added to that system that follows that same nomenclature, it'll automatically be picked up, automatically placed into the class or the type of asset that you defined. And then if you've, within our Axiom display, if you create asset relative displays, it will automatically show up there. So if you have a chart that's looking at the runtime or downtime or OEE or whatever, it'll automatically be updated for that to include that new asset. So that's how it flows through. And like I said, reach out. I can send you a copy of this article that goes into it. And then on our website, if you want to go delve deeper, there's a lot of training. Just go under Canary Views, and it'll provide you a lot of insight on how we do that.
And Russ, I just posted our Canary community there within the chat, and then I will also post here another link. So this is how we do virtual views and asset modeling in version 24. This might be a bit dense, so like Russ said, feel free to reach out for a more detailed, personalized explanation. Now, I think we probably ought to look at. I want to leave you some information about how you can get in touch with us as well as NeoMatrix. Are there any other remarks that you'd like to add just regarding this use case that you presented, Chris, or anything else that's pertinent to this discussion before we close out with some information about how folks can move forward if they're interested?
Not really. The only thing I want to stress is that this was a pure a pure MQTT JSON solution. We didn't use Sparkplug-B, partly because I found it a challenge I like the model stuff similar to the way that we're talking about the views, but from the enterprise level all the way down, and that can be a challenge with Sparkplug. So we just went through JSON, and I was impressed where after we jumped through a couple of little hoops, Canary just worked, and it accepted the data the way it was, and everything worked really well. So,
yeah, and I'd just like to add, again, and reemphasize, like Clark said. We focus on the software. We focus on being highly efficient, cost-effective internally, and how we operate. We build systems, again, that are open, that play nicely with everyone within an open community. And we try to bring, ultimately, our goal is to bring value to the customer. And we're always listening to our customers for opportunities to improve our systems as well as our partner integrators. And the fact that we have so many integrators that are, able to, add our system and then also address, other facets of your digital journey, really makes it nice for your customers. You don't have to know everything. Not that Canary's easy to learn, but if you want help and how to do the overall architecture thing, we really encourage you to reach out to one of our partners, because they do this day in and day out, really have this expertise to help you.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you for all of your time. Thank you for your expertise. We really appreciate it. And to those of you watching, we hope that this has been a valuable session. And just to kind of close this out, I'd like to say that if this has been new to you and you'd like to learn more about Canary, or you've heard about Canary and you want to dive deeper and explore it a bit further, then you can do so really easily. So you can check out canarylabs.com, learn more about the product and how it works. Of course, we have our publicly available licensing, so it's not even gated by an email. You can price a system of any size and configuration that meets your needs without an email, and you can do it in 30 seconds. So it's very easy. We just believe that you can't make good decisions without good information, so we want to make that as easy as possible for you. And and like Chris said, it really just works. It is out of the box ready, and it's something that you can get started with and begin to see value from almost immediately. So if you want to reach any of us, again, my name is Clark Bossert, and we also have Russ Gregg here. We're easy to find here at Canary. Of course, check out the website and then some of our other YouTube content. And if you want to get started too, you can try Canary. So we make it easy and free for you to try Canary if you want to download the entirety of the system, but just on a 30, 60, 90-day license, whatever you need to prove out the value of Canary. You can do that for free very easily at canarylabs.com. And then also the Canary module for Ignition, that's all of the Canary system, just in a really, really tight, seamless integration with Ignition SCADA. That's also free to try. So between a free trial of Canary, the free Ignition module, and then I believe Ignition is still doing just free demo licenses or opportunities to test the SCADA software for yourself. Between those three components, you can try this whole solution for yourself, really without any hassle. So please feel free to grow any route that you like. Reach out to us for help. And then also, JT and Chris, tell us more about folks that might be interested in an integrator of your caliber. You've got a lot more experience with Ignition and all of the other platforms that you mentioned. You really have a lot of expertise for folks that are looking to migrate from another Historian product, or they're just looking for expertise in your area. I'd love for you to share just how people can get in touch with you guys and what a next step would look like. What your takeaway is from this conversation.
Yeah, so thanks again, Clark. Obviously, we don't just do Canary integrations. We're a total industrial automation integrator. So if you ever want to reach out or learn more about us, our website, neomatrixinc.com, is also a great place to look around, or just email me personally at jhart@neomatrix.com. Really appreciate the time and everything.
Yeah. Awesome. And then just to the few folks that had mentioned the Pi system, that's a fantastic product, of course, under new ownership. Folks that were, advocate or just major Pi advocates, they might have a very different experience with the current, experience that they're having with their systems and the licensing. So we do a lot of Pi system to Canary migrations. We have, sales engineers and migration resources that we make available. So if that's something that is a relevant conversation, we'd be happy to have that as well. But thank you to everyone that watched. Again, there's more resources about NeoMatrix as well as Canary on YouTube. We'd love to hear from you, and we hope that you all have a wonderful afternoon, and thank you very much for watching.
Thanks again.